As 2021 approaches, one country in Europe appears to face a particularly bleak and uncertain future. That country is Ukraine, which finds itself locked in what seems to be a permanent political crisis with no effective political leadership emerging to guide the country forward, an economy that remains in what is increasingly looking like free fall, and also a conflict in eastern Ukraine which continues entirely unresolved. Moreover, the political crisis in Ukraine seems to make it very difficult for Ukraine to take steps to resolve any of these issues. Let's look at the economy first. Here, the picture is looking increasingly bleak. The Russians are close to completing with the Germans the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which will divert most of Russia's gas exports to Europe away from Ukraine and supply it directly by pipeline to Germany. We've had information from the Russians that in 2020, Russian gas transit to Ukraine, to Europe through Ukraine, fell by 38%. This was even before the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was completed. The Russian gas monopoly has explained the decrease in the transit of Russian gas to Europe through Ukraine by the launch of new pipelines passing Ukraine. That relates to Nord Stream 1, the existing pipeline which sends Russian gas from Russia to Germany, which will soon be supplemented by Nord Stream 2, and by Turkstream, the new pipeline the Russians have built to Turkey, which now has an active and existing spur going to Serbia, which is already now being used to export Russian gas, which has been exported through Serbia into southern Europe. There's also, of course, in the context of the general economic recession that has hit all the developed economies in 2020, been an overall decline in energy use. However, it is important to say that gas use has been one of the least affected in those terms. So the fact that gas volumes are falling through Ukraine is not just a consequence, or primarily a consequence, of the European economic crisis. It is almost certainly due mainly to the diversion of gas by Russia away from Ukraine. This is an important factor because re-exports of gas from received from Ukraine, which passed through Russia, have been an important source of foreign exchange for Ukraine and a means whereby Ukrainian business people and oligarchs have traditionally enriched each other and themselves, and that seems to be coming to an end. The second factor that is pushing the economy further down is that it seems that the Russians have now largely completed their attempts to diversify away from the use of imported Ukrainian components for their own domestic industries. Until 1991, Ukraine and Russia formed a single economic space when they were part of the Soviet Union, and much of Russia's, or the Soviet Union's, gas turbine and pipeline and steel-making industries were based in Ukraine. After 2014, Ukraine very unwisely imposed sanctions on Russia, preventing the export of gas turbines and steel pipes and other industrial products to Russia. The result is that the companies that made those products are steadily and rapidly closing down, and it turns out, contrary to what the Ukrainians expected, that the Russians have succeeded in developing alternative domestic products which of their own. So that we learn, for example, that Russia has now completed development of marine turbine engines, is forging ahead with productions of jet engines for both for its civil aircraft, which depended before on Ukrainian gas turbine technology, that they've developed helicopter engines, turboshaft engines for their helicopters, again previously imported from Ukraine, and that they're making their own steel pipes and are developing their own shipping industries and their own mechanical engineering products. So Ukraine's heavy industries in the east of the country, which were before 2014 Ukraine's major export money winners, are in apparently terminal decline. At the same time, hopes or expectations that Ukraine would be able to make up for these losses by exporting more of its products to the European Union, including and especially its agricultural products, have not been realized. In fact, Ukraine, as I understand it, now has a heavy trade deficit with the European Union. So unsurprisingly, this contraction of significant parts of the Ukrainian economy is putting heavy pressure on living standards, and it has led to a very steep emigration from Ukraine, primarily to the European Union, but also to Russia, with most calculations being that Ukraine has lost around 10 million of its people since it became independent in 1991. Now, as if this was not all bad enough already, the pandemic, which has now hit Ukraine especially badly, has of course deepened all these problems, and it's become increasingly clear that the Ukrainian government has no real and clear solution to the problem which the pandemic poses. Ukraine's president, Mr. Zelensky, has stated that Ukraine is not prepared to import necessary medicines from Russia, despite the fact that the Russians have offered co-production agreements, and this has triggered a major political crisis and conflict within Ukraine itself. But there seems to be no resolution of this, as all attempts within Ukraine to try and find some kind of basis of a settlement of the conflict with Russia and in eastern Ukraine appear to be going nowhere. So, 2021 looks like being a deeply challenging and difficult year for Ukraine, with its economy spiraling down, confidence in the government falling, and the conflict with Russia apparently continuing with no end in sight. One would like to think, for the benefit of the people of Ukraine, that some kind of solution to all of these problems could be found, and that these problems that are beginning to accumulate and becoming perhaps even intolerable would trigger a search for a solution. Unfortunately, that seems to be nowhere in sight, all the more so given that European interest in Ukraine seems to be slackening. Thank you for joining me in this program. I look forward to seeing you in my next program, and please also look us up on our main channel, the Duran. Look up my colleague Alex Christopherou's channel also, and please support this channel by going to our shop, buying the great products you will find there, our magic mugs, our wonderful t-shirts, our sweatshirts, our hoodies, and our hats. Search us out on our other platforms, BitChute, Library, Rumble, and the rest. And please also support us through PayPal, Subscribe Star, and Patreon. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in my next programme.